Breaking news, Bryan Kohberger's father and neighbor have now spoken out. This was prior to Bryan Kohberger pleading guilty to taking the life of Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. This information was obtained from a book called The Idaho 4. Connie Saba is Bryan Kohberger's parents' neighbor in Pennsylvania and watched Bryan Kohberger grow up. In addition to that, Bryan Kohberger was good friends with her son. Both Bryan Kohberger and her son at one point in time used drugs very heavily. Unfortunately, Connie's son passed away due to drug use. As you may recall, Bryan Kohberger used heroin for an extensive period of time. Connie said she ran into Bryan Kohberger's father last year at a local Rite Aid. She was going down the medication aisle when she saw someone who looked familiar. She stops and she thought it was someone she used to work with, but realizes it's Michael Kohberger, Bryan's dad. It's then that he remembers that he hasn't spoken to her since her son's passing, saying, quote, "We were both shocked to hear Jeremy passed." He then mentions that his wife wanted to call and give her condolences after her son passed away, but she could not bring herself to call anyone on the phone. Michael says she doesn't want to talk to anyone, not even on the phone. Marianne wanted to call you, but she felt unable to. She then asked, does Bryan know Jeremy passed? He then says Bryan was away, doesn't say where exactly, and then says we didn't tell him for months, but yes, he knows. Saying, quote, "We lead a very quiet life. We don't go out, and even when we are home," he says, "they don't feel safe." Saying, quote, "People are watching our house." Connie then says, "What people?" Bryan Kohberger's father responds with, "Government people." He then says, "You know, Bryan didn't do it, right, Connie?" She said she wanted to be supportive and said, quote, "The Bryan I know wouldn't do it." He said, quote, "Bryan wasn't the same after drugs. He wasn't the same person." Connie nods, but thinks even her son had remained sweet and good-natured when using. Bryan's father then says, quote, "But Bryan was framed." Connie was a little startled and said, "Framed?" Bryan's father said, quote, "Someone planted the knife sheath. The police didn't find it when they first went in. There were a lot of drugs in that house, a lot of people around. But they only looked at Bryan." He then asks her, "You know how he likes to drive around when he's nervous?" Connie didn't know, but Michael tells her, quote, "He used to get in his car and drive at night when he needed to think or he had some fog. He had to get away or just think, or when he couldn't sleep, he would just drive around." Bryan Kohberger's father says things will come out in the trial, everyone will see. During the change of plea hearing, Bryan Kohberger's parents attended. While their son showed no sign of remorse for his actions, his parents Michael and Marianne did appear stricken. They sat close to Bryan Kohberger in the courtroom and across the other side from all of the victims' families. Bryan's father appeared somewhat teary and placed his arm around his wife at one point when they heard the details about how meticulously planned his crime was. At another point, Bryan Kohberger's father asked the court officer for some water. Bryan Kohberger did not acknowledge his parents being in the courtroom whatsoever. While Bryan Kohberger's mother and father went to show their support for their son, his two sisters did not.